Hello, everybody, and welcome back to one of our classic live streams. As many of you are well aware, the latest version of Flight Sim just came out yesterday. That was 11/11/22. 40 years of Microsoft Flight Simulator. It's actually kind of fun because when I think back about it, it's like, okay, so which one of these flight sims did I play first for flight? And I think my first one, actually, I hate to say it, is Flight Sim 98. So what I'm going to do is we're going to be flying in the H-4 today. Originally, I had promised using the Wright Flyer, and actually spent a lot of time flying the Wright Flyer just to kind of get a feel for it. I'm not going to lie, we're going to have to fly that somewhere else. Los Angeles just doesn't go well with aircraft that decide to just go and collapse randomly, but we'll certainly do that in the future. So we have the H-4 today. This thing, Spruce Goose, this is Howard Hughes. It's actually got an amazing history, and I just cannot get over how vintage this thing is. I'm a little annoyed none of this works, because this would be like the most fun part of the airplane for me, but look at the engineer panel on this thing. It's so excessive. Like, look at how many different fire switches I have. It has 2 separate APUs, but check this out. Dynameters. So not only does it have a battery, but it has a separate old school dynameter, like something you'd have on a ship kind of a thing. Unbelievable. And it has, APUs, it's got the generator field, it's got all sorts of gauges, and just look at how many instrumentations we have. We're actually powered by the gigantic R4360 engines, which are like 3,000 horsepower a piece. And this thing sounds like an anchor, like a B-36. But one of the things I got a kick out of too is when I first climbed into this thing, it's like the batteries are just like chilling in the front. And then the other thing I couldn't get a kick out of enough is like, see how big this compartment is? Take a look at the front of the airplane. That's only this part of the plane. The rest of the thing is like that. It's so excessive. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be flying up to Lake Tahoe. Should be a pretty relaxing flight for us. Nothing too excessive. We'll stop by San Francisco on the way and everything like that. We are a float plane, so we got to deal with some of that. Look at the handle for the trim. It's so cool. And I think there was another silly handle too, and I can't remember exactly where it was, but I'll find it. So let's get this party show. It's not that we have a lot of information on how to operate this thing, so we're just going to kind of have to work on what I know about aircraft like this. All right, we'll get up to about 25 inches there, a little left. Now, just for the record, if we lose connectivity to the Microsoft servers, which I almost promise you is going to happen, we're just going to pick up wherever we left off. That shouldn't affect connectivity to any stuff that we have for YouTube. It's just going to affect us over here on Flight Sim. It's been going on and off for days now on account of the fact that they're using Microsoft is a great way to kind of think about it here. Not that I can see how fast I'm going, but it looks like about 90 miles an hour here, which should be more than enough. Airborne. Go ahead and bring up those flaps. Oh my gosh, this thing's like flying your house. Check to make sure the flaps came up. I believe they did. Oh man, this is ridiculous. All right, let's gently come over to the right here. I'm going to go ahead and start backing us up to a little bit more of a more reasonable amount of power. Back that a little bit. We'll come down to the green arc. Again, I have no idea what the operating things are for this aircraft. I've done a little bit of reading on the B-36, which uses the same engine. Also, I think the B-50 does. And not the Constellation, but I think it's the 377. It's another Boeing. Also use the same engines, and they're a little picky. Kind of look like corn cobs is another kind of way to do it. So I'm going to keep it nice and low initially here. We're going to do a quick overflying of the city, and then we're going to start heading up to the northeast there. Probably take us up to 10,000-15,000 feet, which would be more than enough for an aircraft of this scale. And I cannot believe how fast this thing goes already. This is ridiculous. All right, everything's nice and collapsed. I could just imagine how many engines you'd lose on this thing as you're traveling a kind of typical flight here. It's just so excessive. I love it. Just look at the control panel. Look at the flaps handle. It's just like a kind of a thing like that. I don't know. I just very tickled. I also like how it's got the little hook here. So like if you need to like kind of like drain, I think that's a light if I actually think so. All right, let's get going in this direction. I have no doubt in my mind there's going to be 1 million people here in San Francisco. We chose San Francisco today because, of course, for those of you who are familiar with this particular aircraft, this was a region where this aircraft would have operated. Originally, the intention of this airplane was to be able to be a cheap thing that we could fly troops and equipment over to Europe in the World War II. And again, one of the problems with it is that they weren't allowed to use strategic materials, like metal. So this entire thing is mostly constructed, believe it or not, out of basically laminated plywood, which is kind of unique for its style. And it's like one of those like, did you think that through? Because this thing has to be pretty big. But like I said, it's so excessive. I think it could hold 2 Sherman tanks in it or something like that, and like 750 troops. I'm trying to remember what I was reading about this plane. But one thing I do appreciate it is it's so large and it has so much inertia. I haven't had to touch the controls yet. It's just incredible. So here's San Francisco. One thing I appreciate that they've added is these like kind of little rescue boats and stuff like that that you can kind of see. You have like the big tanker ships and things, and you got your Pier 64 and all that. 34, not 64. Of course, we have the Bay Bridge, we have downtown right here, which I'm going to be kind of careful with because I don't want to accidentally. I did shut damage off. I've learned my lesson from enough live streams that when I say, oh, don't do this, and I go smacking directly into like the nearest thing that I can go smacking into, I think I've learned my lesson by now. All the level of detail is so good, and it's a lot less laggy than it was when we were trying it earlier to get my little photograph. Kind of pop right through downtown. I'm sure everybody downtown thinks the world's coming to an end when they see something of this scale. I'll kind of pass over them. But it's always neat to see just the sheer level of detail here in San Fran here. My buddy used to live in San Francisco. I actually got to watch out. I got to watch out for the wingtips on this thing. It's kind of big. All right, let's go swing across. Oh, man, this thing's like flying a house. I love it. Big old container ship right south of us. It looks like I'm about to get past. Somebody's in a G21. Great choice, great choice. And we're just going to kind of make it this way. When I think of San Fran, of course, I think of basically getting to the highest point in San Francisco, pointing my car downhill, and then accelerating up to as much as I can and doing as much damage to the underside of the darn plane as I possibly can manage. So it's just kind of one of those fun things. All right, let's go. Oh, my gosh. There's somebody in Bell 407. We could do something with helicopters someday for those of you who are interested. Helicopters are super duper fun. Our videos next week are actually all going to be helicopters. Notice, by the way, that my pitch trim wheel is connected to the yoke. It's just so neat. All right, let's come swinging this way. Very nice. I feel like there's like a brake on this thing, but we're so big. There we go. Give it just a couple extra mini full pressures there. And kind of go a little bit of right foot. The rudder on this thing, I think, is twice as tall as my house. I just don't know how you physically, with your body, could push those rudder pedals hard enough to actually get it to deflect once air starts smacking into it. I just feel like it would just be crazy. A couple taps of the pitch trim. You can see I'm just tapping it right there. And we are on our way. Fantastic. All right, let's go run through all the engines real quick and make sure everything's fine. I believe we actually do have automatic pilot on this thing. All right, how's it going, new person? Now go ahead and tap that up to a 45. Looks pretty good. RPM, we could probably come down a little tiny bit. Morning, be a passive observer. Fantastic. I think that was the original intention of live streams, but absolutely wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. We got about 180 on the BMAP, so we're doing fine there. Oil, we don't have to monitor oil consumption on this thing, so I'm not going to stress too much about it. Everything else, we're just going to make sure our P's, T's, and E's are correct, and that looks pretty good. That looks pretty good. That looks, it's a little, I don't know why this is so cold. Probably could close up the cowl flaps at this particular point, which is probably a mistake I'm going to make. All right, let's see here. We're going to open up our cowl flaps. I thought they were, we'll go ahead and close them. Go ahead and snap those all up. Oh, they're in pairs. Ah. So let's see if the cowl flaps closed up okay. And it looks like the cowl flaps did indeed close up okay. I'm going to bring us a little bit to the left here. I can't get, whoa. Okay, then. Oh, man, this thing is so ridiculous. One fun thing you can do to it that I found earlier is you have this little handle right here. Hey, why are you guys following me so close? Yeah. Okay. And the other engine displays, and it's just so cool. Like I said, something like this is just unbelievable. So my buddy used to live in San Francisco. He's a good example of the East Coast, West Coast. In the United States, one of the classic statements people will say is, don't stay in the West Coast too long because it'll make you soft. Don't spend too long in the East Coast because it'll make you hard. But of course, what they're really referring to is the Northeast Coast, which happens to be where I'm from. And then, of course, we're talking when we think California. California is really 3 different states because it's just so big. It has so many different personalities depending on what part of California you're actually operating in. But again, it's just always so fascinating. I could never get over the sprawl. Like, you read like Will Gibson with like Neuromancer or something like that, and they talk about Chiba City and all like, just the Western sprawl. And then you have like Night City from like the Cyberpunk game. Somebody's really getting close to me. Night City from the Cyberpunk games. And like when you come to these parts of California, like that's what you expect. That's what it actually feels like, which I think is incredible. All right, let's see who's following me so close here. Oh my God. Lafarag, nice done. Welcome back, by the way. Felsted, welcome back. SDO91, welcome back. And Bad Company, welcome back. Salk, I don't remember, I'm sorry. And Locos, hopefully we catch up to you in a few minutes here. All right, so we're just going to proceed. But like I was saying with California is that once you get out of the city, like I said, it's a completely different like countryside. Lafarag, this must be the easiest formation flying you've ever had to do. This thing is just a brick and it's very, very stable. So we're just going to continue our little climb here. I don't want to do anything excessive, but a minute ago I did change all my temperature. So let's go check everything real quick. Oil temp's fine. Coolant temp has barely come up at all. Fuel flow hasn't changed. Cylinder temp is way too low. Again, I'm not touching controls here. I just trust it. And my cowl flaps are completely closed. Let's see here. I'm not going to mess with this. I'm not going to mess with this. Whoop. Let's snap back over here and enjoy our little flight here. Now, one thing that they have changed, which I'm sure all of you are aware of, is that we have new CFD in this new version of Flight Sim. And as you're noticing, I'm not touching my controls here, but my plane is all over the place, even this thing. Yeah, really. It's fantastic. But one of the things that we know is because of the new CFD and the way that the air is actually simulated, I'm not going to turn it on and blind you with the lines, but all this terrain down here now has a massive impact on the performance of this aircraft. I think it's a little excessive at this point, only on account of the fact that my wind speed is 2. So at 2 knots wind, you're not going to get that much weirdness off the ground, especially with something that's as large as this. But that, again, that's going to be a work in progress from the good folks over at Microsoft. Again, notice, I'm not manipulating my controls, but we're kind of going all over the sky here. It is what it is kind of a thing. Got to make those glider folks really happy. One of my buddies is a hardcore. He's actually a glider flight instructor. So at some point what we'll do is we'll go bother him and have him take us up in one of the virtual gliders and kind of show us the ropes. The short version of gliding is that looks about right, TLAR, T-L-A-R. That's what I always like to say. And it's just a general philosophy. Another thing we can take a look at too, and the videos coming up next week are all going to be dedicated to helicopters. Now that we have the 407 as well as the, what's the Cabri, I think the G2, kind of a neat helicopter. I thought we'd do some videos on that as well. Now, as far as a live stream on helicopters, that's going to be a great exercise in frustration. But Microsoft was nice enough to give us some really nice assists to make it a little bit easier. Sorry, I'm hearing this droning of the engine. And the first thing that comes to mind is this great movie called Airplane, which came out a few years back. But in Airplane, of course, they have a Boeing 707, and they make the airplane droning propeller noise the entire flight to see if anybody notices. And it's just one of those things where I think in the original script they called for a propeller-driven aircraft, but they actually changed out of it later. There we go, about 45 inches should be plenty, not too bad. My T's and E's look delightful. I'm not complaining, I guess. I love this bar right here. I just feel like I'm going to whack my head on it. Like, there's a nice little optical illusion it creates. Also, look at this flashlight. Love it. And we have flare controls. Oh my god. So old school. One of the books I had finished reading over the summer was actually in the Manhattan Project. And one of the things they described was the actual mission to drop that bomb and how absolutely absurdly dangerous and crazy that whole operation was. And one of the things I was really respectful about it was the fact that they talked about the flare system that they used to have on a lot of World War II era planes. Basically, you shot a specific color flare for the purposes of notifying people what's going on. You know, do I have an injured crew member? Fire the green flare. You know, do I have a bad right tire? Fire the purple flare. So one of the problems, like, if you lost radio control, for example. But one of the problems that the returning boxcar aircraft had was the communications were giving them all sorts of trouble. The runway was packed, so they basically fired every single color flare under the sun, hoping that the good people at air traffic control could, kind of sort it out, sort of a thing. Of course, the reality is that when you see, quite kaleidoscope of flares coming out, it's like, what are you trying to tell me exactly here? Just kind of like, okay. So let's go ahead and see how we're doing here. We got a direction. We're heading roughly northeast, which is good. Airspeed looks low. Like, I feel like I have my landing gear down or something like that, but I'm looking at my flaps controls, and we're okay. Now, when I was doing my estimations, I was estimating a much, much higher airspeed for this thing, so maybe that was a mistake on my part. Can the Spruce Goose land on land? Fantastic question, person. The answer is not well. If we actually look underneath it right now, you'll notice that we have no landing gear mechanisms. The real one, by the way, what they could do is actually mount wheels to it. So once they mounted wheels on it, they could pull it out of the water, like basically winch it out of the water if they had to, for the purposes of doing some maintenance or scrubbing the bottom or something. But it is not intended to be a land-going aircraft in any means. And again, remember, this thing was designed to be a transport plane. So the reason they did it the way that they did it was so that, as long as I've got water, I can land. I don't need a runway. Of course, the part that always blows my mind with this thing is where am I supposed to load it? See what I mean? See what I mean? Now you load it directly from the big cargo doors that have located up there. But the cool thing with loading is if we're loading in water, all somebody has to do is make the world's tiniest mistake, and all of us are going to go swimming rather than, be safe and be able to, kind of land it normally directly there. Just kind of one of those things. All right, we're going to kind of come this way, and I think this is pretty good. I don't even know what my altitude is. I'm going to guess here. Probably 6,000? Maybe that's a little high. I don't know. Let's take a look. Where's my altitude? Oh, 4,500. Eek. was off by 1,500 feet. That's pretty painful. That's okay, though. This is a pretty good altitude. We could probably get just a little bit. I need to get McMinnsville. Oh, that would be very cool, Dave. Totally like the concept. I'm actually going to give it a little more power here. The Alpha Rog is going to get annoyed at me in a second, but I want to get just a little bit more power. It's just, I love that sound. It's just, it's so vintage. It's killer. Yes, absolutely. The neat thing is, for those of you who want to see something pretty cool, if you go on YouTube, later on, they actually have some great tours of the real H-4 Hercules, the Spruce Goose. And when you see the scale of the plane, it'll just melt your brain just how absurdly large this thing really is. And again, it looks pretty big. For those of you who fly in VR, try it in VR. You don't realize how high up you are here when you're sitting until you hit the water and you're like, oh, I'm 40, 50 feet up higher than I expect it to be. And it's like I said, just incredible the first time you kind of encounter it. All right, so unfortunately for us, we have nothing nice like a GPS or anything like that. We do have some radio navigations. Okay, Carter Smith, excellent question. I'll answer. He asked the question, by the way, how much is the interiors model? Watch this, watch this, watch this. This is not a ladder, by the way. And stuck. That's it. This is as far as I can go. I appreciate the life vests and life rafts and stuff like that. So unfortunately, we can't go any further than this point. That's actually you can see our two little sets of doors here. We can escape. One thing I was kind of surprised about when I floated back here, and again, I haven't flown one of these in the real world, so I'm working off of what I got here. I'm like, shouldn't there be like a hatch down or something like that? And I'm just looking around, and for the life of me, I do not see it. People who have been there, of course, will tell me about it in the chat, I'm sure. Yep, thanks you, Lime Sly. Like I said, I'd love to do Wright Flyers next time, but my experience with the Wright Flyer and flight sim so far has not been positive. It's not to say I can't fly it. It's not to say we can't fly it. It's just to say it's not good in the sense that it doesn't lend itself well for a live stream. One of the things I was experimenting to see how long I can stay in the air, and I kept running it out of fuel. So the problem with that is, obviously you can fly with limited fuel or something like that, which is cool. It works. But, I don't know, kind of takes some of the fun out of it. But at the same token is, once that thing stalls, it's gone. It is really a wing and ground effect kind of an aircraft. At least the version they give us. The later versions of the Wright Flyer were much, much more, not that they were like sports cars by any means, but they were much quicker and they were much easier to operate. And unfortunately, we don't have one of those. Oh, well. Kind of come swing this way. Notice we got away from the mountains and everything's a little smoother. It's great to see somebody flying the Bell 407 there. Definitely for another day for us. And coming over on our left, let's see who else we got flying out today. Another Bell 407. We have somebody in the Beaver, which is a super fun plane. The Goose, by the way, freaking awesome. For those of you who haven't taken it for a flight, by the way, it's just great. It's way faster than I expected it to be. All right, we'll kind of continue our little climb here. I think we got probably about 5,000 feet. Let me go ahead and knock this out. Yeah, I've got about 5 now, so we're doing okay here. Vertical speed has kind of just drifted off. I'll give it just a little tiny bit more thrust. There we go. As long as we're not out of the green, right? Oop, I've run out of throttle. That's it. Let's go check our P's, T's, and E's. I think we're okay. The cylinder temperature is only 100 Celsius. Like, that's nothing. As a matter of fact, if you were flying a real aircraft, you'd probably want quite a bit warmer than 100. You probably want somewhere between 170 and 200 Celsius-ish, depending, of course, on what engine and what generation, everything like that. All right, I'm going to kind of come to the right. I think we're roughly on course here. One thing I really, really wish worked on this one, come and take a look at our radio compass. Yeah, that gives us direction, but more importantly is, like, we have the options for, like, the old school voice radio, but we have all this stuff right here. And maybe somebody one day will release a mod that activates. I love how it's a radiation gauge. Nice. Maybe somebody will actually make it so we can use the NDB and ADF here, like, clicking the switches. I mean, even has antenna and comp and loop mode. Like, come on, man. Come on. Let us do it. Let us do it. Trust us. We know where we're flying. So unfortunately, if we were to fly this thing normally, we don't have the nice glazing you have on a lot of the Russian planes of the era, like those glass windows, kind of like the greenhouse down here. So we can't, like, do the traditional, 25,000 feet looking out the window kind of thing, which is a shame. Come to my right just a little bit here. Looks pretty good. Oh man, this is, remember a minute ago I was saying that California is like 3 different countries. We've left out in San Francisco, and you just look at the front. Agriculture. It's just crazy. And then you look out the left. You understand why there's so many airplanes here. We've got this very, very large airport right off to our left here. Let me go see. That's Travis Air Force Base, for those of you curious. And I like how Hackerman's here is chilling in that one. We can't go any faster. I would have to drop the waxing compound. We need both horsepowers for this thing. So one of our guests there has a great reference to Mystery Science Theater 3000. It is a very, very fun show for those of you not seen it, but on one episode called Space Mutiny, which you can get on YouTube, by the way, the good guys and bad guys are actually chasing each other using, it looks a lot like a floor waxer. So they have some very, very choice comments on their choice of transportation there. And yes, we don't have both horsepowers on this thing. We're probably pushing 2,500 horsepower per engine right now. So we're going. Like I said, we just need a little bit more altitude to take advantage of it. And incredibly, the superchargers on this thing, I've got this thing floored, and we're not even making full boost anymore, which is actually kind of surprising. But knowing the era, it doesn't surprise me. We're still, of course, look at the B map right now. It's ridiculously high. All right, we are on course. Fantastic. Now, this is the part of California which is like, okay, lots and lots and lots of things just to kind of stare at, looking at our way. We're about a quarter to a third, I would estimate. If you actually look way, way, way off in the distance where all these mountains are, they're not nearly as far as they look, by the way. Our Lake Tahoe that we're going to be flying into is right over the top of that, and that's going to pop us down directly into where we need to do. Now, what I'm very curious about, let me see if I can pop out my right window here, is can we see Stockton from here? It should be pretty darn. Oh my gosh. No wonder we're having so much turbulence. Hey, those windmills will slow the Earth's rotation down. I did not make up that quote. If you want to look up who said that, you'll be quite amused, by the way. Wow, that's a lot of windmills. A little bit of a tailwind would be all set. Not bad. Not bad at all. I mean, you got to imagine like all the wineries and all the food out here. And like I said, this is kind of like, once you get out of the mountains, everything gets a lot quieter. You just got to pop on one of these roads and basically drive. I would make some comment about Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, but I think we're just a little bit too far west for that. Somewhere outside of Barstow, on the edge of the desert, when the drogues begin to take hold. For those of you who are familiar with that particular reference there. All right. I think we're more or less on course here. Nice. All right, we're just going to continue and kind of make our way towards our destination. Not too bad. Not too bad at all. Swinging around back, we'll go take a look at how all this is going. I'm very curious. I wonder if you can start these in mid-flight here. Yeah, you can. I probably broke it, so broke. Neat. Neat. Very cool. So we have dual APUs. Now, the interesting thing is when they went to model this aircraft in Flight Sim, they actually modeled it not with 8 engines. One of the limitations of Flight Sim, as you know, is we can only have 4 engines, which is a super shame. But basically what we have here is we have pairs of engines. These are actually linked. So if I were to pull one of the throttles down, both of them would come down simultaneously. If one of these were to die on me, both of these would die together, even though it's basically more than one engine. Uh-oh, we got a butter kind of sneaking around there. Nice. All right, come swinging around. Up Earth, most Harpy. Fantastic. Actually, there's one thing I want to check on. While I'm floating around with my disembodied head here, there was one number I wanted to look at that I didn't check recently. That's not the number I want. How's it going, emergency butter? So it's like a form of butter. That looks good. I gotta find the number. Where's that magic number I'm trying to find? Calibrating dial, that looks good. The cell tanks, that looks pretty good there. See that actually shut itself down. That's all. Where is that number? So in case you're curious, I'm looking for the fuel gauge on this thing. Is it something that's right now? It can't be above my head, but all the lights in the universe are above my head. Oh, shut all those off. I like how it comes as one switch. There we go. I'll leave this on so people can see me a little bit better. Interesting. For some reason, I must be completely blind because I do not see what I'm looking for here. Let's see, that's all electrical. That's all oil. That's all engine. That's the radio. Can we go around the back, maybe? No, I'm going to crawl back here. Of course, what am I doing instead of operating the plane safely is I'm taking a look around real quick. That's okay. Interesting. Well, I guess we have to use the guess system. Is there something down here, maybe? Like I said, I've only had a day to play with this, so a lot of these numbers won't mean anything yet. Although I can tell by the shift of the light in this, we must be turning. We're ascending. Cool. And we lost all sorts of things. Oh, gotta come to my left here. We got a little off course. That's okay, though. That's what I get for floating around the inside rather than paying attention where I'm flying. Oh man, could you imagine flying this thing to England? Let's see here, 150 knots, 2,000 miles. Ooh, that would be, that's an endurance live stream if I've ever seen one. There we go. That should be roughly back on course. We're aiming for that little thing of mountains over there in the distance. Okay, that looks pretty good right there. And gotta pull the nose up just a little bit. We'll treat the airplane like a rental. There we go. Nice. Now, one of the interesting things is the flying club that I'm part of, the airplanes that we fly, all club members have to buy a share of the plane. So one of the things is when you do a normal rental, you know, $150 an hour or something like that. And it's like, well, I don't care if something bad happened. I'll just run it at full throttle because it's somebody else's problem kind of a thing. So it's just kind of a fun way to look at it. But with a plane that's like, I paid a lot of money to be able to even get into the plane. You know, kind of shifts your perspective just a little tiny bit as far as that goes. I'm going to give it a couple taps of trim, and I think we're in pretty good shape again. There we go. Whoa, easy. I don't know why we're getting bounced around so bad here. Like, I feel like we're just too large to be bounced. There we go. Close enough, close enough. Now, an interesting thing is if you come up here, we have the autopilot control. Now, what they didn't do is they did not allow us to go ahead and click on this particular autopilot. Next launch gets it. Of course, the club, speaking of our flying club, it's the 43rd, by the way, for those of you who are curious about it. One of the interesting things about that flying club is they recently purchased a third plane. So right now at the club, they have three. They have themselves a Piper Archer from the late 90s. It's the most modern plane I think I've ever flown in my life, other than I got a couple minutes at a Cirrus. Cirrus, by the way, I've also flown the Robinson 22. I think that was like a 2008 or something like that. But they have a Piper Archer 3, which is kind of, I think it's like a 97, 98. They have a Cessna 182P, which is this like Cessna 182, but it's from the 70s, and it still is in miles an hour, to give you an idea. And its POH is less of a POH and more of a suggestion book. You know, instead of pilot's operating handbook, it's a PSH. It's a pilot suggesting a handbook kind of a thing like that. Because like all the numbers for calculations are like, just, you know, about 15 gallons per hour, about 10, about 136 knots. And it's absolutely absurd when you try to plan for it. I love that plane to death, though, because with 40 degrees of flaps, if you cut the throttle on approach, the plane carrier lands 100% of the time. And one of the fun things is you fly it with one passenger, not three. When you go to come in for a landing and you cut the power, the nose wants to fall off the front of the plane. It's ridiculous. It just tries to dive and stick your propeller right into the dirt. So when you pull your throttle back, you get that loss of elevator sensitivity, and you have all that extra weight. You basically have to use nose up trim to safely land that thing with just with you and one other person in the front, because the center of the gravity is so forward. Of course, if you put two heavy people in the back, you're the opposite. When you come in for approach, what you do is you pull the throttle back and the nose pitches up, and it makes for the most smooth landings you will ever see in your entire life. So it's just kind of fun how it's such a quirky plane. But they recently purchased a third plane. Oh my God, look at that. That is so awesome. Oh man, that is definitely, look at how angry that looks. That's fantastic. That will be our picture unless something else comes up that looks going to be better there. So the third plane they just bought was a Mooney 20J. And as you probably noticed, I was talking about that a little while ago, is I finally had the opportunity to get checked out with it. And I was talking a little bit about it in some of the videos this week. And one of the things that were so interesting about that plane is it's retractable landing gear, which I've never flown a plane with retractable landing gear in the real world. And it's just kind of one of those things that even though you use it, you know, like all the time in flight sim, gear up, gear down, all the time, you've never actually tried it until you've tried it. So in the Mooney, there's a couple fantastically weird things about it. The first thing is you get into it, and I'm not the world's tallest person, I'm like 5'10", 5'11", somewhere in there kind of a thing. But I get in, and what you normally do is you sit down, and below your legs, there'll be a little handle from pretty much every airplane that allows you to adjust the seat position. So, of course, I do what I do in every airplane. I get down, I sit down, I pull the handle, go like this. So I'm like, all right, I'm ready to go flying. This is a pretty good view. I can see everything. I can reach the yoke, which is about here. So what happens is, of course, I reach my toes down, and I can't hit the pedals. So the pedals in the Mooney would be like on this wall. So I'm like, are you kidding me? Okay, now we're in the correct seating position so that I can even safely operate the airplane in the Mooney, which blew my mind, kind of a thing like that. Alpha Rog saying he flew a 172 from 66 a few weeks ago. I learned on like a 68, so it's actually pretty amusing. Those have the most terrifying flap levers. If you go down to 40 degrees, they're not positional. You have to press and hold it to put the flaps down. It's terrifying. But anyway, so I got my position, ready to go in this plane. It's a fuel-injected plane, which I have to do a video on because that's actually kind of neat. So, of course, you get the thing started by pulling the mixture control out instead of in, which is different. You get the thing started. It's only 200 horsepower, which is weird. It uses takeoff flaps, which I've never flown a plane that requires flaps on takeoff. It's actually the greatest thing ever for the people who fly the Cessna 182, by the way. If you do that little 10 degrees or 20 degrees of flaps on takeoff with a 182, it's just butter as far as takeoff controls goes. Like, you don't have a lot of frustration moving around. So you get the thing started. You taxi over the runway. It's retractable landing gear. The shock absorbers don't just... I knew this was going to happen. There's absolutely no shock absorbers in the thing. Yes, I am. Oh, excellent, Alpha Rog. Excellent. Alpha Rog was just telling us that he got to go on a Cessna 172 flight for birthday present from the 60s. Those 60s 172s have no inertia. They're like 152s are today. They're fantastic. So we went up to the runway. Of course, you do your run up and everything, which is a little different. So you get on the runway. I push full throttle. I'm expecting to get like crushed in the seat like you do in the 182. It doesn't do it. It just makes a lot of noise and kind of down the runway. So you get to 60 knots. You give the controls a tug like you always do. Normal planes, you have to go like this, and then the plane starts going up. The Mooney goes like this, whoop, like that. It just sort of whoop, that kind of motion. It's completely different than anything I've ever experienced in any plane I've ever flown, including those in the sim. The only thing close to that was the B-52 that they had back in FSX, and the B-47, which they also had FSX. It did a really nice job simulating that whoopsie-daisy, almost like a helicopter kind of a takeoff. It's the strangest thing. The other thing they had on that aircraft, which is totally different to me, is speed brakes. We don't usually have speed brakes in general aviation planes. So what we did is we traveled up to something. Oh, got to be careful. That give's got a little bit of room here. We traveled all the way up to an altitude of 7,500 feet, which is pretty high for me. What is that? Ha! That's a great place to put some cargo. Love it. Fantastic, Lafarog. Fantastic. I'll never forget my first flight as well. That was also in a 172, now I think about it. So you go get airborne, as they have the button you press, and out of the wings, it's like the coolest little thing. But up on the wings, you have this little bar that comes up. It slides upwards like a glider, kind of like this kind of a motion. And as soon as you press that, the whole plane dips, then rises, and it starts buffeting a little bit. But the most incredible thing is you could push that button without changing your power, and the plane would instantly have a 500 feet per minute descent. Like, you just boop, 500 feet per minute, push it again to shut it off, and now you're no longer descending. Like that. It was so different. And then, of course, the scary part was landing. Exactly. Nah, it's perfectly fine. Like I said, I'm using my feet here. I don't have to do much. This is a very stable plane. So it looks like we're actually getting pretty close. We're going to go by the probably southern part of Lake Tahoe here, and then we're going to come rip it around. The original Hercules never really left ground effect. The RV-12, by the way, is a neat plane. But the final thing on the Mooney that surprised me was landing. So in the Mooney, when you put the flaps down, the nose pitches down, which is weird. So you deal with that. So next what you do is you put the landing gear down. So now the nose pitches up. So I guess the concept is you can put the landing gear and the flaps down at the same time, and they cancel each other out. But there's no drag in that plane whatsoever. So when you cut the throttle to come in for landing, you could cut it from 1,000 feet and never touch the throttle again until you basically need to turn off the runway. But we were flying into Scranton, Pennsylvania. And in Scranton, Pennsylvania, there's a huge honking runway. It was nighttime, so I had no idea what I was doing. But when you go to land it, like normally, you put a lot of like this, quite a bit of flare on a real plane, like in normal planes, like a 172. This plane is flat on the ground. So when you flare, it's like an airliner. You just go like that. And that's enough angle to flare it. And then basically you sit there until you hear the skirt, skirt. And remember, no shock absorber, so the first one is extra bouncy. Totally fun. Wild plane. I kind of wish we had one. Oh, hi there. Oh, I died. Collision and breakup mid-flight. So that was fun. Let's see here. The RV-12, any of the RVs are... So for those of you not familiar with RV planes, they're kit-building airplanes. They tend to be incredibly fast airplanes. They also tend to have... homemade quirks, I guess is what I want to call it, because no two like RV-4s are exactly the same, because there'll be little differences in avionics and kind of aerodynamics. Not that any planes are ever the same as each other, but they all have a kind of a unique little personal thing that they do. But they're wild planes because they're so fast for their size and power and economy. But you get things like a passenger plane where I sit in the front and somebody sits directly behind me, and this is my passenger. So, I mean, that's perfectly fine, but it's sort of a weird scenario because, like, you know, normally when I'm, like, talking with people when I'm flying the plane, you know, I fly with the co-pilot all the time. You know, she'll reach over and push switches or hit buttons or, like, talk, you know, if you want to hand me a pretzel or something, just kind of hand me a pretzel, like, during flight or whatever. Can I steal a sip of that, you know, big gulp or whatever? But when they're behind you, they're in a separate compartment. So it's like you're flying by yourself, and every once in a while you hear a voice on the radio. It's just kind of one of those things. It's I don't know. I just thought that was kind of interesting. And there are a couple cases in history where, you know, people would be basically flying back there and have an oxygen problem, for example, and not be able to communicate with the people up front because, you know, their radio wasn't set up correctly or they passed out. So it's always kind of an interesting thing when you can't see folks. Emergency butter. Oh, no, you're fine, emergency butter. I should be paying attention to what I'm doing here. Just can't get over how stable this thing is. All right, so we're going to have to think about landing in a minute. We got about, let's see, 40 miles. I don't have my E6B next to me. I can probably work it out real quick here. Let's see here. We're doing 40 miles divided by 140 times 60. That's going to get us about 18 minutes before we're going to be in the water. I think it's actually a little quicker than that because I think we went a touch fast, but that's not bad at all. And the interesting thing is there's a ton of people over there in DC-3. Oh, I forgot to fly the DC-3. I got to try that later today. DC-3 is a fun plane, but rarely is it modeled well, I guess is what I would say. Swing over this way and kind of line myself up. Like I said, it's going to be right behind this mountain range here, if my calculations are correct, which they should be decent. Of course, I have no idea how much fuel we're carrying anymore, which is a little nerve-wracking, not going to lie. Maybe that's what this was for. Just a hole. Love it. Actually, I want to go see what's over here real fast. So fascinating. Oh, well. All right, so landing procedure, we have no idea what the speeds on this thing would be. We could certainly, if we knew the wing area and we knew the mass of the airplane, we could probably estimate them within 5 or 10 knots-ish, but we're just going to have to kind of feel it out. So I'll show you kind of a fun strategy that is involved to it. Carter Smith asked a fantastic question. Does the flight sim help with real-world flying? I'm going to say yes and no to that one, Carter. I've been asked that question a lot. I actually have a video dedicated to that one if you're interested in kind of learning more. The reality is, what does the flight sim teach you? The first thing is it teaches you avionics. I agree completely 100%. If you have a well-simulated, you know, avionics set, you're going to understand the avionics better when you get it. Thank you, Lafarog. Appreciate it. So one of the things is they're going to teach you how the avionics work. Just understanding how GPSs work, how you can lock courses in. There's a lot of minutia in avionics you don't get in the real world. For example, there's like this little attitude indicator calibration, which doesn't seem to work, which is a little disappointing, but that's okay. It will work. Startup procedures are completely unrealistic in every flight sim, except for jets. Jets are very realistic. Propellers, propeller-driven aircraft, such as like Lycomings, especially, not so much Continental engines, they just don't start like they do in the simulator. In the simulator, I walk over here, all right, I'm ready to start the engine, set on my fuel, click a button, it starts. In the real world, they fight you, the battery starts to lose voltage, it doesn't start the first 2 or 3 times, and other times the next day it starts as soon as you crank it. The combustion process is so more nuanced in the real world than it is in a flight sim. Now, like right now, I'm running this thing painfully high pressure right now and painfully high RPM. But if I float back here and take a look at my gauges, I've got closed cowl flaps here, but my cylinder temperatures haven't even crossed 100. Are you kidding me? I'd cross 100 just idling. Like, it's just that the nuances of combustion very few people get. I know that the back in FSX, they had, my gosh, I'm going to get it wrong. I'm going to call it FS Real, but I know I'm wrong. It's actually a developer out of Connecticut. I've met the guy many times, too, and I just cannot remember. He did a really, really nice a Cessna 172 has the real expansion pack and stuff like that. I'm going to forget, but somebody would remind me. He also did a really, really nice, like a Comanche, I want to call it, or FSX. I can't remember. Again, apologies. I think he also did 377. But he did a pretty nice job understanding how combustion gets tricky. But like I said, most of these games just don't get it right, especially like when the air changes density or there's moisture in the air. Like all that messes with it. The other thing in the real world that sucks here is the fact that nothing can replace the control forces. You know, when I give this thing a tug, the distance I just pulled that yoke back, I could not physically do with one hand in the real world. I just couldn't do it. It would be like 100, 200 pounds of force. I just can't do that. I could put my feet up here and really jerk it, or, you know, I could go borrow somebody in the right seat to help me pull back on it. But you just can't move no problem. You can pull them back all day, every day. You know, when you go to flare a plane, if your trim isn't set correctly, you might not be able to pull back hard enough to safely flare the plane. You just don't get that control force, and that, I think, is a huge loss, especially when you're landing, because I'm not going to lie, in the real world, it's easier to steer the plane because everything is pressure-based versus distance-based, and you can feel 15 pressure equals this many degrees per second, and it's just much more, it's just smoother and it's easier to work. But like I said, the opposite is also true. I can't grab onto this U-wheel, and if I did this, I couldn't do it. Like, it'd just be too hard to physically move something that large that quickly. And again, it's not this fake auto delay that Flight Sim puts on it is completely unrealistic. It's that I physically couldn't move it. It's not that I couldn't physically move it quickly. So unfortunately, that's a huge disadvantage. The other thing I would say with real world flying versus the sim flying, and this is very true, is sim flying is fantastic for passing navigation, especially with Flight Sim. If you can navigate in the Flight Sim, and you will probably be a perfect navigator. Not perfect. You'll be a good navigator in the real world. One thing I always tell people with the real world, of course, is it never looks like this outside. When you come over here, this is let's make it a little worse here. This is what it looks like. This is your average day in the real world. So when it comes to spotting things on the ground, it's very challenging to do. So it's just one of those things that they never quite get right. Oh, next launch, I agree. I think somebody has the patent of force feedback controllers, and like the two that are force feedback, people don't have. They're kind of expensive. Hey, I knew that was going to happen about 1 million times today. All right, we're heading into the mountains. Oh boy. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to come off course intentionally here because I want to go to Tahoe itself, the Gardenville, I think it's called. I always forget. I'm not from this region. I can tell you all about the Northeast United States if you'd like me to, or a little bit of Canada, but don't ask me anything about this region. I have no desire to travel to California. I know that's fighting words for some people, but sorry, I like my coast. California is too populous for me. Obviously, this isn't, but you get my feels. The other thing with the real world, too, is air traffic control. This is going to sound funny, but for those of you who are familiar with VATSIM, which is a wonderful service, by the way, and I think it's fantastic people are willing to volunteer their time to make things way more exciting for us. The reality is I find the people in VATSIM to be more formal and strict than those in the real world. Like, I know that's sounds scandalous, but in the real world, I can make a sarcastic comment. Well, keep in mind, you have to be professional and safe. Always remember that, no matter what I say here. But at the end of the day is, there's a little bit of personality, there's a little bit of humor, there's a little bit of, I'm going to say this because it's efficient, I'm not going to say it because it's the correct way to say it. So one of the big differences you learn really fast is, when I'm coming up for a landing, I won't even, or for a takeoff, for example, I'll come up to the runway, I'll top the red 6-4 holding short of 20 on Alpha. That's as much as I'll say. And the people at air traffic control notice I'm there because I need to take off. I didn't even have to ask for the takeoff. So they'll call me back, red 6-4 clear to take off, 20 winds, a 2809 or something like that. And then I'll just, cleared for takeoff, red 6-4, off I go kind of a thing. Very, very almost informal. There are certain things that aren't formal, like, the Bravo airspace. But one of the great things, yep, thanks, Mr. Waffle. Thank you. Herr Waffle, I guess. Herr Waffle. It's all good. But one of the fun things, as another example, is I was flying over New York City, and we heard on the radio somebody getting chewed out for crossing into Bravo airspace. But the air traffic controller, he wasn't actually, what's the best way to say? He basically said, you do realize you just crossed into Bravo airspace. There's no official phraseology for that, but he said it. And of course, the guy immediately calls him back and says, just so you know, my intention, I was handed off to Bravo airspace by the previous controller, and it created an interesting little standby kind of situation. And we're just looking at each other in the airplane going, oh my God, I'm glad that wasn't us. That could be the end of your flying career right there. But of course, they found out the previous guy did clear them. But the nice thing is, because all the controllers sit next to each other, he can just shut off the radio and look at the guy next to him and say, hey, did you clear this guy? And they're able to have that conversation very quickly. So like I said, it's just a different level of formality. And the other thing too in the real world is things like courtesy calls are really important. Getting clearances, if I'm sitting there ready for takeoff, I'm really feeling the effects of the mountains here. If I'm getting ready for takeoff, for example, or ready to a taxi, I will call for flight following before I leave the taxi position. But what they'll do is not only will they give me flight following, but what they'll do is they'll give me taxi clearance too, which is just completely different. And then you'll also get things like if you're busting traffic patterns, for example, they'll be very formal. The more patterns you do with them, the less formal they get about it, to the point, I hate to say it, they almost get in a groove. If you've done your 11th landing at the same runway and you're doing touch and goes or stop and goes, they'll basically, as soon as you finish your right turn, they'll say clear for the option. You'll be like, haha, I didn't even ask for it, but thank you. So just a difference. It's so weird. So in conclusion, for the person who was asking about Carter Smith there, at the end of the day, the flight sim will help you with navigation. It'll help you with procedures. It can't help you with I call it this, you know, the actual flying of the plane. You have to do it. And same thing with the engines and like the systems. And none of the needles are even, and none of the engines run at the same RPM. And my throttle, see how like in this, I can push the throttle forward and they all go together. In the real plane, one of those throttles would stick and it wouldn't go all the way. Another throttle would go further. One throttle would have a bend in it. Like everything would be different. Like none of that would be consistent. And flight to flight, you know, I might push this thing in all the way, but now today the throttle's back a little bit. But like little stuff like that makes a huge difference in the real world because, you know, it freaks us out. The other thing too is like, this is another one that the real world does differently. If I grab onto the RPM control and go like this and push it, do you see how all the RPMs seem to be synchronized with each other? I don't think so. In the real world, if I pull that RPM lever back, it doesn't even kick in right away. The oil pressure has to build up for it to actually adjust. And then when it catches, it goes, whoa, whoa, yeah, oh, and actually dances. And it's just not how it does that in the real world. It's just, like I said, so different. All right, let's get ready for landing here. So originally there was a runway, it's not actually a waterway, a seaway, called Homewood. There we go, Tango 38, and it's located here on the west side of Lake Tahoe. So what we're going to do is we're going to pass over South Lake Tahoe, take a left, and basically line ourselves up for the landing. Oh my gosh, this thing is like, let's keep flying here. Actually, what I'm really curious about, you want to lag your computers, everyone? Come up to weather real quick and click this button. Look at that! Feel the lag. Fun button to play with, by the way. We'll do gliders another day. I don't think a glider live stream would work, only on account of the fact that we'd have a lot of, I believe this is, I forget my buddy, he would call them off-field landings, I think is the exact expression he would typically use for that. And we're just going to catch it right there. And that looks pretty good. Not bad. Not bad at all. Woo! Feel that. Beep, 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 beep. Ooh. The not the accelerometer, the non-inclinometer. In about 2 minutes, I'll remember the name of the instrument there. It's the one that tells you whether or not you're climbing or sinking. It's like an energy meter almost kind of a thing. All right. There's so many people flying here today. I'm so impressed. Notice, by the way, all the airplanes we've seen today, like everybody's flying helicopters because, you know, why not? Let's fly some helicopters in this beautiful mountain range here. And, of course, we have the H-4, and we're just ripping along here. This is so cool. Are we being pursued by an F-18? Hope not. I think it's fun that if you had a Baron, like a Beechcraft Baron right now, or like a Bonanza, you could easily pass us. And that's just kind of fun, even though we have 8 engines. Let's see, do the math here. 3,000 times 8, that's 24,000 horsepower, and you can keep up to us. Variometer, emergency butter for the point. Thank you. Variometer is the button that is going to make all the beep, 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 beep. That's going to tell you exactly how much you're climbing up or down now. I swear to you, the wheel that I'm looking at right here, they just pulled off like a boat or something like that. All right, let's get ready for landing. All right, looking good. H-4, looking good. Looking good, looking good. Like I said, I could probably pull out the checklist real quickly. Let's do this safely. All right. En route climb before landing. Let's see what we got here. Final approach speed is 90. Can I join? Random guy, you're always welcome to join. All you have to do is head over to, I think, Lake Tahoe, Kilo, Tango, Victor, Lima. If you want to go to that airport, you can catch us on the landing there. All right, so final approach speed is going to be 90 knots. The flaps are going to be all the way down. Landing light is going to be on after landing, before landing. Looks good. We have no VFE on this thing that we know of, so I'm not going to stress about that too much. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the lights on. Oh, they're already on. Cool. Whoa! I'm loving these new thermals. It like makes it like fun. Whoa! Somebody's going fast. Air Force. I believe I'm about to be intercepted by someone named Mad Owl? What are you doing? Are you sure that wasn't Space Shuttle? All right, let's keep on moving. Now, the interesting thing here is as I've been cruising along, we've been progressively gaining just a tiny bit of altitude. We're actually at 6,300. We're the highest we've been so far. So it just gives you an idea. I'm loving the way this thing is just bouncing. I kind of want to see if the wings are jittering as we're going over these bumps here. Yeah, not really. I expected something made out of plywood to be slightly more dramatic. All right. Now, I know a lot of people who talk about Lake Tahoe and say it's a really, really nice place. It's a very large lake, is my understanding. And I think we did a video here with, I think it was the Pitts 2S, actually, to give you an idea of how long ago that actually was. Now, just a quick thing, since we're kind of coming here towards the end, is it's just this new update's been really wild. The Bright Flyer is a blast if you haven't tried it. The Baron is, not the Bun, the Beaver is super fun. The Goose is amazing. The Jenny I played with, I'm not a fan of because it doesn't have brakes. The 310, the Airbus, which I'm sure a few of you have already opened up and played around with, it's a neat plane. Like, I'm glad that we finally have something that anybody can fly that's like kind of that level of plane. I just wish the performance on it was better. I find that, I've got a pretty strong computer and you can see how smooth everything runs here, but man, that Airbus just gets me. Thank you. Thank you, random guy. I'm just kind of moseying along, enjoying my day here and talking about random things. But the A310, it's pretty cool. I think we can do a stream with it soon. I don't think I want to do it anytime soon because everybody's going to be flying this. Like, so let me update the dev. I'm sorry, newer person. I know that people are struggling really bad with this update because when I tried to do this yesterday afternoon to sort of test everything, the Microsoft connection kept dying. It took me quite a few times to actually get through. And then all the satellite imagery would fail. But the good news for us is it's getting close to about 3 hours. Yeah, so most of the people in California now, which happens to be where we're flying, will be waking up pretty soon, or at least sitting down at their computers to play the update. So I imagine it's going to get progressively worse as the day goes on, and then it'll probably get a little bit better later on also. All right. Now, this is so cool. Got all these little lakes. I feel like I'm climbing and diving. I got such a kick out of this, G. Perez. Like, try this plane in VR. It'll melt your brain, just the scale of it. Like, right now, it looks like it's just, I'm just kind of sitting there cruising along. But, like, I can stand up, like, vertically and just walk. Like, you can't do that in a lot of these other planes. Whoa! I wish the default seating position wasn't like this, because when you do that, you create that nice illusion of sinking. Realistically, a default seating position for a flight sim should be something like this. All right. Oh, look at that. His name is Aviate Dude. Aviation Dude. Oh, I like that. That's pretty funny. I like that. 1 point. Let's see that. Cabri G2. I promise you, I've got some videos about the Cabri coming out next week. I have a whole week of helicopter stuff coming out for us. I think helicopters are amazing. It was my first dream. And like I said before, there'll be some good stuff for that coming out. All right. So I'm looking at those mountains that are directly off my 12 o'clock there. And my brain tells me that I'm going to smack into them. So one of the interesting things I actually learned from a flight instructor recently was the fact they used to have a device that you could look through a pair of binoculars at lines, and by holding it level with a bubble, you could tell if you're going to smack into something. And you could also tell the things like the height of a cloud or something like that. So I'm just going to tell you now that we're going to smack into those. So I'm going to go ahead and give us some RPM, because that's the only place I'm going to have any horsepower left. And I'm just going to do one of these things and kind of ham up just a little tiny bit here. Random guy, I'm on the East USA server. Now, the reason I picked the East USA server is because it makes it easy for me. Thanks, Emergency Butter. Appreciate it. All right, we're just going to get a little bit of altitude. We're definitely going to lose some speed here, but those mountains are pretty excessively high there. I think the Lake Tahoe airport is like... Is it 6,200? I don't remember. I got to go look it up again. I'm getting out. I'm have the imaginary chart. I'm pulling out in front of my legs here. Let's see here. Yep. So the elevation of Lake Tahoe is about 6,200 feet. So we definitely have to get over these. One thing we should think about, though, is playing with the mixture control. But I don't think that we have manual mixture control. Don't do that, please. Do I have manual mixture control? Nope. Seems to be automatic. 1,000 feet per minute is pretty good, though. 1,000 feet per minute beats my Cessna 182 any day of the week. We're also getting close to the time of year. I'm not landing on New Person. We're going to be landing on Tahoe. So that's, if you see where this aviation dude is, we're actually going to pass over this mountain range. And directly after the mountain range, on your left, is going to be the lake. You can't miss it. It's gigantic. Now, like I said, my first comment here was there's really 3 Californias. Look at this version of California. Everybody brought skis, right? Seeing as I got 750 people capacity on this thing, so I think we could pretty much take the entire U.S. ski team pretty easily. Now I'm starting to feel the controls get a little soft here, which probably means that we're playing the pulling up too hard game. But seeing that our rotate speed is 80 knots, I'm pretty confident we're going to get across this. Of course, if I had to cancel my climb here, I'd have to make that decision any second now, because I'd have to immediately pull to the right here in order to stay safe. Yeah, Zach, it does fly. Believe it or not, it has an official service ceiling of something like 20,000 feet, which is really impressive for it. And again, I'm pretty lightweight. I think I'm only about half weight here. Let me take a look. Yeah, look at how much fuel I burnt, by the way. 6%. That's how much gas I've used for about an hour worth of flying. So that's pretty good, given that I've been anything but gentle with these engines this entire flight. Oh, man, I'm feeling like I might not be able to get through it. I'm going to go for that pass right there on my right. Right there. I don't want to take any chances with these high pokey mountains. Oh, man, bring my skis. Bring me my skis. Ready to see like 100 people on the lake today? I'm not the only one who thought it would be a good idea to go to Lake Tahoe. This is such a classic waypoint in California. And it really is cool. Of course, if we were to bring the real Spruce Goose into there, I'm sure the locals would be like, hey, you're blocking my view to the lake. What do you think you're doing? Come on, engines. Come on. This is the biggest danger here because I'm looking at my manifold pressure slowly dropping. Come on, come on, come on, come on. What do we have for altitude here? It's probably about 10 grand, if I had to guess. Yeah, just about. Come on. Come on. You can do it. This desperately needs a Pan Am livery, by the way. Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. You can do it. Docs X Gaming, this aircraft did fly in ground effect. That's it. By the time this thing was ready in 1947, like I said, they were like, this is a waste of money. You spent, it was like $87 million US at the time. I forget exactly how much it was. Probably less than that on this project, and it never worked. And basically, it's like, but watch. So they started it and flew it over, basically, I think it was Los Angeles. They bounced around the bay a little bit with it. Okay, we made it. We made it. Oh, I thought for a second there we weren't going to make it. Okay. I hate the default seating position. You can edit those, by the way. All right, so what I want everybody to do now is to press the deploy skis button. And then we're going to aim for the back side of this slope I have coming up on my left here. And we're just going to ride it right down into the lake. Oh, man, this is great. All right, so I think there's one more. See this pass right here off my 12? Right there. So what we're going to do is we're going to come through this and take a left and have a beautiful thing like this. New Year, just lurking. Google search says 23 million is equivalent. Wow, that's a lot of money. Thank you, Jonathan. Appreciate it. That's a lot of money. Wow. Oh, welcome, Jonathan. I'm looking at the Ober. But excellent, welcome. All right, let's go ahead and back that RPM down. We've danger has been snuck out here. Yeah, isn't it incredible? I suggest everybody goes onto Google afterwards and find a YouTube video that has somebody walking through this airplane in the real world. It is insanity. I believe one of the pictures you'll find is a DC-3 sitting under the wing of this. I could carry DC-3s with this. And yes, that's a more than one. All right, watch this, watch this, watch this. All right, it's reduced. So this is really bad for the engine. You're really not supposed to be dropping down to 20 inches of mercury and just sticking the nose over. That's not healthy. All right, watch this, watch this, watch this. Haha. Could have brought a few gooses and just put them on a hat to spruce them up. I love it. The Goose is such a cool plane in this plane. I'm so glad they added that. Also that, what is it, the J3? I forget the one that Lindbergh was flying there. Lindbergh, by the way, interesting character. That's as much as I'm going to say about that. Let's just say that I don't always agree with some of the ideas. Let me just say that. All right, here we are. Let's do a nice dramatic shot. Look at this. Look at this. Welcome to Lake Tahoe, everyone. Isn't that awesome? Jonathan Ober, yes, I was actually talking about flying this plane in VR earlier, and I do quite a bit of this game in VR because it's just fun, especially with the helicopters. Oh, look at that! Welcome to Lake Tahoe, everyone. Back up to 50 inches. Isn't it? Hey, once in a while I get lucky with my locations how to do this. All right, so we're going to be landing up at Homewood today. Homewood is right along the west coast, so what I'm actually going to do is kind of bring us to the left, and we're going to get ready for landing on this one. So thanks to Laugh-A-Rog, he pointed out the fact that we're dealing with a 90 knot approach speed, which at our weight is probably going to be closer to probably 80, 82, 81, somewhere in there. I'm just guessing because, again, nobody has a POH for this book other than probably some little note thing that somebody put together for it. Look at this forest. That's insanity. Oh my gosh. Water skis, are you kidding? I'm using my regular skis. Look at these mountains. I can catch some real nice powder here. So fun things fair is you always heard the expression lake effect snow. When you have a lake like this, you got to imagine how ridiculous it is. All right, let's start getting this thing slowed down. I'm doing, I really need to see how fast I'm going to be able to land this. Excuse me. Cap, how are you supposed to fly? Oh, give it back, give it back. Yeah, I know. All right, let's go ahead and slow down here. Newer person, this is a pretty nice, not too bad. It's an i9, it's a 10850K for the processor. I think it's like 4.7 gigahertz, 32 gigabytes of RAM. Everything's a solid state hard drive. It's a NVIDIA, I want to say it's a gigabyte GeForce 3080 GTX is the card on it. The connection, it's whatever your standard kind of hometown cable modem is, nothing else. One thing I will say is I use the DLSS now that the good folks over at NVIDIA created. It's not bad. Not bad at all. Not bad at all. All right. So what's going to happen is you see this little outcropping right here at my 12 o'clock. It's one that I'm just looking right at. So the little outcropping, believe it or not, the Homewood, the dock for us is on the opposite side of that. So what we have to do is you basically have to kind of come kind of wide away. Usually what we do is an obstacle check first. So we go very low over the water and look at the water, make sure there's no logs or anything waiting for us. And then what we do is we actually kind of come wide, swim back around, and then we do our landing because you don't want to accidentally hit a log. Although with something this size, why not, right? All right, I was really surprised we didn't get intercepted today, so I'm actually kind of glad about that. Look at this angry formation. Is that not amazing? There's a screenshot right there. I think we're going to use that for a screenshot today rather than all sit in the water. All right, let's get in a position here. 130. I just got to study that airspeed. Look how weird that airspeed indicator is. Those are the ones that go around twice. So it looks like there's a little stall marker. That little tiny rectangle is probably going to be, yeah, about 130. Okay, good enough. All right, before landing. Oh, I don't have a co-pilot to help me out here. So one thing I'm very spoiled in the real world that I fly with my wife, like always my co-pilot, even when we're flying with friends, and it's spectacular having a co-pilot. It's like literally the greatest thing because they'll, read checklists, they'll remind you things, there's a second set of eyes. Of course, you have to play the can you see the traffic game. So, we get a call and say, do you see the traffic? Do you see them? No. Right there. I think you're making that up. No, it's really there, I swear. I think you're making it up. Like a little F-18 here behind that mountain. Whoosh, gone. All right, let's start slowing this thing down. I have no idea what the safe operating speeds are in this. Let's see here. Gas undercarriage mixture propel flaps light speed. Should be good. All right, so we're looking to land on the opposite side of that peninsula. First notch of flaps, please. Are these press and holds? All right, flaps down. Whoa! Ho! Those control. Wow, we slowed down fast. What am I doing? 60? Yeah, I'm doing 60. Oh, I guess I'm following Lafflerock again. We're so high out of the water, it wouldn't even matter. Oh, YouTube's being silly. Now would be a good time to insert ads. You get more money by inserting ads. No! One of the people that I was talking with recently, they were discussing the concept of getting rid of the ads completely and going over to Patreon. It's tempting, but Patreon, I think that's a lot of responsibility for me during the school year. So I don't know that I want to do that. All right. Oh, man, I'm doing 70 knots here, and it wants to stall, but it's not slow enough to stall. Like, you can kind of feel it getting kind of heavy here. All right, 500. That looks pretty good to me. Bring the nose down. The big thing here is those gigantic 8 engines we have would be producing so much airflow over the top of the wing. If I cut the throttle, we would just go and sink right away. There we go. And we just got to hang a gentle left turn in just half a second here, and we'll come right up on the beach. Nice and easy, nice and easy. That's 80 knots. Like go into concentration mode here. Can't get over the flaps. They really stop you. They're like 182 flaps. There we go. We're just going to pass over the trees here and scare everybody. Normally, like I said, we'd have to do an obstacle check. That's okay, though. Yes, they are. So if I split my throttle, you can see how they're all grouped. Great question. Oh man, these people would be so pissed right now. Heyo! Don't mind me. So this is a water landing, and it's a glass water landing, also known as a carrier water landing, I like to call them. So what you're going to do is you're basically going to hold a constant attitude until you feel the splash. The goal here is not to try to flare or anything like that, because if you do, we're going to hit the wrong part of the thing. We have to hit the middle of the plane before we hit the back of the plane. Otherwise, it goes and it's really nasty. All right, here we go. Remember, you're up a lot higher than you think you are. All right, constant feet per minute. And all we're going to do is wait for the splash. No flaring. No flaring. Don't flare. We're here. Wham! Oh, I love it. Oh, what a plane. What a plane. Love it. All right, so usually I like to crash on the water at the end of this, but I felt like we earned this one, so I'm not going to crash this time. As always, at the end of a flight, I like to ask if anybody has any questions or suggestions for future videos or anything like that. I have a beautiful picture already today, so we won't have to worry. Oh, careful, Alpha Rug. We have a beautiful picture already, so I'm going to use that picture for our little thumbnail. People were asking last time about those thumbnails. They said, well, how do we see them? If you just refresh the video, you can actually take a look at the thumbnail. So what I'm actually going to do is pivot real quick here. Should be able to run just the outside two propellers, and that should get us spinning around here. Yeah, see how they're linked together? Oh, this is such a cool plane. Oh, wait a minute. I forgot something. I don't get credit for it if I have my difficulty, whatever. Whoa, cancel, whoa, ew. I'm pivoting, by the way, because I just have that engine on. So I could just jam on just that one, and it'll help snap us around nice and evenly. Fantastic. I love that flap handle. So chunky. All right, nice. Okay, so like I said, we've got our picture, and I don't see any comments or questions over in the chat, so what we'll do today is we'll fire up our little APU generators here, just kind of start them up a little bit, kind of gentle. We'll go ahead and kill the engine starters already set. So here is our fuel condition thing. You just click the switch to shut off the engines. And that should do it. It should get very quiet in a second. Yeah, there he goes. Fantastic. What an awesome plan. All right, folks, have a wonderful rest of the day, and I'll see. There you go. Iris has got the right idea. Have a wonderful rest of the day, and as always, enjoy. Thanks for watching, and I think next time, helicopters, we'll see. Enjoy.